The Whitmore living room smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine, the artificial kind that comes from a plug-in diffuser rather than a real tree. I sat perched on the edge of a floral armchair that had occupied the same spot for over 2 decades, my knees pressed together, palms resting on my skirt like I was waiting for judgment. Christmas lights blinked lazily through the bay window, reflecting off glass-framed photos lining the shelves. Vacations, graduations, endless family celebrations. In every single one, my smile looked like it had been stapled in place. The fireplace crackled, casting a deceptive warmth across the room, but it didn't penetrate the frost lodged in my chest. Veronica's squeal cut through the air, high-pitched and performative. She tore open a gold-wrapped box, hands trembling with anticipation. "Oh my God, Mum! Dad! It's exactly what I wanted!" She held the cream-coloured Gucci Marmont bag aloft, caressing it as though it were an infant. The hardware gleamed in the firelight, catching every eye. At 26, she still bounced on her knees like a spoiled debutante. Diane clapped her hands together, her manicured nails clicking like castanets. "Only the best for our baby girl," she said, eyes brimming with pride. Richard adjusted his Rolex and gave a satisfied nod. "You deserve it, princess." The room hushed, expectant, as I peeled back the wrapping paper from my own gift. The package was slim, barely the size of my hand. Inside, a plain envelope sealed with a snowflake sticker. My fingers didn't shake. They'd been trained through years of small humiliations. I opened it carefully and slid out a flimsy holiday card from the clearance rack of a drugstore. 2 snow-capped mountains, a generic "Season's Greetings" printed across the front. No handwritten note, no check, not even a gift card to the grocery store near my apartment. I had wrapped each of their gifts with obsessive care. My teacher's salary barely stretched to cover student loans and rent, but I had saved for months for this moment. A silk scarf for Diane, Italian woven, $180, tied with a perfect bow. A Parker pen for Richard, $145, engraved with his initials because he had mentioned needing one for client meetings. A rare art book for Veronica, $120, complete with a handwritten note about the museum exhibit we'd promised to see together. A promise she never kept. "Maybe this year will be different," I had whispered to my reflection while applying mascara, careful not to smudge. Hope, stubborn and defiant, had bloomed inside me even after decades of frost. Now, standing in that suffocating room, I smoothed the wrinkles from my skirt. "I think I need some fresh air," I said, steady voice masking the earthquake within. No one looked up except Lila, who crossed the carpet and squeezed my shoulder firmly, her touch a secret code. "You're not wrong," she whispered. "You deserve so much more." I nodded once, throat tight, then retrieved my wool coat from the hall closet. The fabric scratched against my wrists as I buttoned it slowly, bottom to top. Methodical, like a ritual. Not a single person turned their head as I stepped out the front door. The sounds of eggnog and shallow laughter fading behind me. The porch steps groaned under my boots. Snow crunched beneath me as I walked to my car, its windshield dusted with white. I drove toward Council Crest Park, the city unfolding below in glittering silence. When I parked, Portland's skyline shimmered like a field of fallen stars. My breath fogged the glass as I whispered the question that had haunted me for years. When did I become so invisible? I pulled the cheap Christmas card from my pocket and stared at it. Paper thin, but it carried decades of erasure. My tears finally came, hot and relentless, painting streaks down frozen cheeks. For 29 years I had begged for My smile looked rehearsed, jaw clenched as if to keep myself from shaking. Beside it, a glossy photograph of Veronica's Sweet 16, an extravagant banquet at the Benson Hotel ballroom. A custom 3-tiered cake, chandeliers dripping crystal light across satin gowns, Dad's arm proudly draped around her shoulders, while Mum adjusted her brand-new pearl necklace. I placed the photos side by side. The imbalance was almost laughable. Almost. Next, college letters. Mine, a full scholarship to Portland State, carefully laminated by me for safekeeping, with a single note from Dad paperclipped to the corner. You'll need to get a part-time job for expenses. Veronica's, an acceptance to a private fashion institute in New York, followed by a semester abroad in Milan. Mum's scrawled handwriting still lingered in blue ink. We are so proud of you, darling. Don't worry about a thing. Focus only on your studies. I turned to my graduation folder. The day they arrived 20 minutes before the ceremony ended, apologizing because Veronica's preliminary fashion show had run long. Dad had checked his watch even during the hug, while Mum left a lipstick smear on my cheek and asked when I would finally start job hunting. My fingers shook as I opened a leather-bound ledger where I had kept meticulous notes during my 20s. Student loan payments, $24,800. Hours worked at the campus bookstore, 20 weekly shifts at $12 an hour. Rent receipts, $1,200 each month for my drafty one-bedroom. In a separate column, a newspaper clipping about Veronica's tuition, $38,000 annually, plus $20,000 for her Milan program, paid in full by family contributions. The inequity burned across my vision like neon signs. My entire adulthood had been shaped by their refrain. Clara will manage. Clara's the independent one. Clara doesn't need help. But I pressed and held the notification, then silenced the entire thread. No more pings, no more reminders of a stage where I had never been allowed to play a role. Instead, I turned back to the evidence surrounding me. Each photo, each receipt, each brittle scrap of memory was not just nostalgia. It was proof. Proof that my experience wasn't a figment of bitterness, but a clear, deliberate pattern. Golden child and scapegoat. Favoritism and erasure. I whispered aloud into the stillness of my apartment, as if daring the walls to disagree. This is real. I am not imagining it. Outside, Portland's perpetual rain drummed against the window. Inside, I felt the first fragile flicker of clarity. It wasn't love that had kept me tethered to the Whitmores. It was the hope that maybe, someday, they would finally see me. But hope, I was realizing, had been the most dangerous weapon they wielded. I leaned back, staring at the photo albums strewn across the floor, and breathed deeply. Something in me had shifted. The truth was documented now, undeniable. The question lingered, sharp as glass in my throat. If the family you're born into cannot see your worth, is it still your family? By February, I had stopped waiting for the Whitmores to cool. Instead, I began calling myself to account. My Saturday mornings were no longer wasted refreshing Veronica's Instagram posts of rooftop brunches or blessed family dinners. I spent them in a drafty pottery studio off Hawthorne, sleeves rolled to the elbow, palms sinking into cool clay. The wheel hummed beneath my hands as if reminding me, creation doesn't need permission. Most beginners fight it, said Miranda, the instructor, her silver-streaked hair falling over her cheek as she leaned close to examine my piece. But you're learning to collaborate with the clay. That takes patience. I almost laughed. Patience I had in abundance. I'd spent not inward. Meanwhile, school offered unexpected validation. Principal Harrington, known for his granite expression, summoned me into his office one Monday morning. He slid my evaluation across the desk, eyes soft for once. Exceptional work, Clara. Your creative writing unit engaged more students than any program we've tracked. I'd like you to lead the summer program. I stared at him, stunned. Independent, hard-working, dependable, words that had always been weapons in my parents' mouths, suddenly became currency of respect. I accepted, with a nod that felt like a bow to the younger versions of myself who had begged for acknowledgement. My savings account began to shift too. Instead of emergency fund, I renamed it home down payment. Each deposit, whether $50 or $200, was a brick in a foundation that would finally be mine. The real test came one Thursday night when my phone rang after midnight. Veronica's name lit up the screen. Against instinct, I answered. Her sobbing filled my ear before I could speak. "Derek left me," she wailed. "He just walked out after dinner. I can't believe this. Clara, I need you. Come over. Now, please." The old me would have thrown on a coat, driven across town at unsafe speeds, held her hair back while she cried into champagne-stained pillows. But the woman I was becoming took a breath. "I'm so sorry that happened," I said gently. "I can talk tomorrow during my lunch break." There was a pause, sharp with disbelief. "What? I need you now. This is serious." "I understand you're hurting," I replied, voice firm but calm. "I'm available at noon tomorrow. My time matters too." The silence stretched so long I thought she might hang up. Then, in the smallest voice, she whispered words I had never heard from her. "I'm sorry, Clara. I didn't think about what time it is for you." When the call ended, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding not from guilt, but boundaries are only real if you live them. So I RSVP'd, yes, on my terms. I'd arrive with Rowan Ellis, my colleague from the history department, who had recently invited me to dinner with a nervous smile and a paperclip twisted between his fingers. On the afternoon of the wedding, Rowan picked me up in his worn Subaru. I wore a sage green silk dress that brushed just below my knees, elegant but deliberately modest. 3 months of careful budgeting had bought it, and I had never felt prouder slipping into something I hadn't gone into debt for. "You look incredible," Rowan murmured as we parked near the manicured lawns. His hand rested briefly at the small of my back as we walked toward the entrance. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider in my own family story. Veronica spotted us before we reached the door. She stood in a sequined cocktail dress far too formal for a garden wedding, waving dramatically. "Clara, you actually came!" She air-kissed the space beside my cheek, her perfume cloying. Her gaze slid to Rowan. "And you brought a friend?" "Rowan Ellis," he said, shaking her hand politely. "Elisa's colleague. And more than that." I smiled. "We've been dating for 3 months. Veronica's brows shot up. "Mom didn't mention that." "Mom doesn't know everything about my life anymore," I replied evenly. The words tasted like freedom. Inside, the reception hall glittered with chandeliers, but the cracks showed if you knew where to look. Richard argued in hushed tones with the photographer about payment terms. Diane carried a scuffed leather clutch, not her usual Prada, and her smile stretched thin under the weight of maintaining appearances. The biggest tell came when Veronica attempted to pay for a round of cocktails at the bar. The bartender returned her platinum card with a shake of his head. Her face drained as she fumbled for another. During the ceremony, I watched Kayla Banana exchange, "The condo's too expensive, and She trailed off, eyes glistening. "I never learned to stand on my own like you did." For years I had fantasized about this moment, not her collapse, but her recognition. Yet instead of triumph, I felt only a sober clarity. "That sounds difficult," I said softly, keeping a careful distance. "But you can learn. I did." We sat in silence, the first comfortable quiet between us since childhood. The roses swayed in the evening breeze, and I understood something. I wasn't here to rescue her. I was here to live my own life, even if she finally saw me now. When we rejoined the reception, Diane gushed to relatives about our practical Clara, while Richard avoided my gaze. But for once, it didn't matter. Surrounded by sequins and champagne, I realized the true shift had already taken place, inside me. The summons came in the form of a carefully worded email from my mother. Family discussion. Important. Sunday at 6. Please come. No exclamation marks, no emojis, just a command disguised as civility. I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying with a single word. Noted. When Sunday arrived, I parked my Honda in front of the Whitmore house, setting the timer on my watch for 2 hours. That was all I was willing to give them. The porch light flickered weakly, and the wreath from Christmas still hung on the door, though it was late March. The cracks were showing, even here. Diane greeted me with an over-bright smile and an embrace that smelled of desperation rather than Chanel. "Clara, darling, you look wonderful. That promotion suits you." Inside, the living room felt strangely rearranged. The Italian leather sectional was gone, replaced by a generic beige sofa that looked like it had come from a clearance warehouse. The expensive crystal vase that had always dominated the coffee table was missing. But the family photos remained, frozen in their mythology. Richard rose from his recliner, shoulders stooped, his Rolex. "We were wondering if you might temporarily help with Veronica's expenses. Just until things stabilize. Family helping family." The word temporarily stretched thin between us like a worn rope. I reached into my purse, pulled out the worn Christmas card and set it on the table. "This," I said quietly, "was the moment I saw the truth." Richard frowned. "A card? Really, Clara, we're discussing serious financial matters." "This is serious," I said, my voice gaining strength. "This card represents 29 years of being told I mattered less. Veronica's Sweet 16 at the Benson Hotel while I got a melted sheet cake in the kitchen. My full scholarship with your note telling me to work part-time while you funded her tuition and Milan program in full. You've always had money when it was for her. But for me, there was never enough." Diane's face drained of color. "We never meant—" "I don't believe you meant it consciously," I cut in. "But it happened. Over and over. Every Christmas. Every birthday. Every milestone." To my astonishment, Veronica spoke up. "She's right." Her voice trembled, but she met their eyes. "You always treated me as the golden child, and her as nothing. I saw it. I benefited from it." The room fell into stunned silence. Richard opened his mouth, closed it again. Diane's tears spilled, genuine for once, not weaponized. Richard's voice cracked with anger. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By shaming us?" I inhaled deeply, steady. "I'm offering something better than money. Honesty. A chance for a relationship built on respect instead of obligation. I will not fund Veronica's lifestyle while I've struggled to afford my own. I will not be your financial solution. But—" I turned toward my sister. "I will help." The balcony garden already sprouting basil and lavender. No one had dictated. No one had criticized. It wasn't large, but it was mine. On the entryway wall hung a simple frame, a worn $2 Christmas card mounted above a small brass plaque I had ordered online. Catalyst, December 24. What once symbolized humiliation now served as proof that pain could be alchemy. That evening, Aunt Lila arrived with wildflowers from her backyard, arranging them in a ceramic vase I'd made in pottery class. She touched my shoulder gently. "Your grandmother would be proud, Clara. She always said you were building something sturdier than anyone could see. Rowan uncorked a bottle of modest wine while Veronica entered quietly, carrying a houseplant in a plain ceramic pot. Gone were the sequin dresses and designer handbags. Tonight she wore sensible slacks and a blouse, her nails short and unpolished. "It's a peace lily," she said, setting it near the window. "It doesn't need much, just steady care." Her voice faltered. "Kind of like me." I swallowed hard. The last time she had come bearing a gift, it was flaunted with hashtags and filters. Tonight, it was humble, almost apologetic. Over dinner, homemade pasta with roasted vegetables, nothing extravagant. Veronica spoke about her new receptionist job at an accounting firm. "It's not glamorous," she admitted, "but my roommate's teaching me about budgets. For the first time, I feel like I'm learning." For once, I didn't feel the old tug of resentment. Instead, I felt a cautious warmth. Change didn't erase the past, but it reshaped the future. After the plates were cleared, Rowan helped me hang curtains in the bedroom. His hand steadied the drill, his laughter filling the space when the rod slipped and nearly toppled us both. "Have you thought about next summer?" he asked, balancing on the step stool. "That cabin on Mount Hood is still available to rent. We could, I don't know, escape from..." I opened my journal and wrote, in steady ink, "Worth is inherent, not conditional." The peace lily on the windowsill caught a trace of moonlight, its leaves glossy and alive. I smiled at the simple metaphor. Growth requires light, yes, but also distance from the shade that stunts you. By autumn, my condo no longer felt like a fragile experiment. It felt like home. The bamboo floors bore the scuffs of ordinary living. The balcony garden hummed with bees, and the pottery bowls I once called practice pieces now held fruit and flowers instead of dust. I had filled the space with intention, not obligation. When the invitation for another Whitmore family dinner arrived, I didn't hesitate to decline. No excuses, no fabricated conflicts, just a simple, "I'm not available." And to my surprise, the world didn't collapse. My parents didn't show up at my door demanding explanations. Instead, the silence stretched, and I found I preferred it. Instead, I chose who gathered around my table. One October evening, Rowan set down a pot of soup while Aunt Lila arranged autumn branches in a vase I'd made. Veronica arrived last, her work uniform still wrinkled from a long day at the accounting office. She carried a pumpkin pie from the grocery store, sheepish but proud. "I didn't have time to bake," she said, cheeks flushed, "but I bought this with my own paycheck." I met her eyes, searching for the old vanity, the expectation of applause. Instead, I saw something new. Humility. Maybe even gratitude. We ate simply. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, soup, and Veronica's pie. The conversation felt real. No staged bragging, no pointed questions about my life choices. Just Rowan telling a funny story about his students, Lila recalling childhood mischief with my late grandmother, and Veronica quietly admitting how hard it was to juggle rent, bills, and work. Meta. Sex. 0.05, draping a blanket over my shoulders. Below, Portland glittered in its usual patchwork of lights. "You've built something remarkable," he murmured. "Not just this place. A life that's yours." I leaned against him, the weight of his arm steady and certain. He was right. For years, I had begged for scraps of love, convinced my worth depended on recognition from people who withheld it like currency. But now, surrounded by choices that were mine and voices that lifted instead of diminished me, I finally understood. The gift wasn't the bag Veronica flaunted. It wasn't the promotion my parents ignored. The gift was realizing I had been enough all along. Inside, The framed $2 Christmas card caught a glint of lamplight. I no longer saw it as evidence of invisibility. It was proof of transformation. The night I stopped begging and started becoming. I closed my eyes, letting the cool autumn air wash over me, and whispered into the night. The gift was finding myself.